Hey there, my amazing royal watchers. I hope you're all having a fantastic day so far. Welcome to another episode of Untold Royal Secrets. It's your favorite royal critic back here again, and what I'm about to share with you today is going to absolutely blow your minds. We're not just scratching the surface anymore, folks. We're diving deeper than we've ever gone before into the absolute cesspit that is Meghan Markle's carefully constructed web of lies, deception, and quite possibly criminal connections that she's been desperately trying to keep buried for years. So now the master manipulator, the spotlight-hungry zealotster, the rotten gold digger who fooled a prince and tried to fool the world is now screaming in absolute despair as her house of cards begins to crumble around her. She's desperately trying to silence everyone. Journalists, YouTubers like myself, former associates, anyone who dares to speak the truth about who she really is and what she's really done. But here's the thing that Meghan Markle simply cannot comprehend in her narcissistic, delusional mind. You can't hide the truth anymore. The internet remembers everything. People have receipts, and the dam is finally bursting. So let's start with the bombshell that's been making waves in the darkest corners of the internet. The whispers that are now becoming roars. The connections that are finally being exposed despite years of careful scrubbing and legal threats. I'm talking about Meghan Markle's alleged connections to Jeffrey Epstein's circle. And before anyone starts screaming about conspiracy theories, let me make something crystal clear. These aren't just random internet trolls making things up anymore. We're talking about people with actual evidence, photographs, documentation, and insider knowledge that's starting to surface despite the best efforts of very powerful people to keep it buried. Now, I want to paint you a picture of who Jeffrey Epstein really was, because understanding his operation is crucial to understanding how someone like Meghan could have become entangled in his web. Epstein wasn't just some random billionaire with questionable habits. He was running a sophisticated intelligence operation, a blackmail network that extended into the highest levels of government, business, entertainment, and yes, even royalty. His confidant, Ghislaine Maxwell, and their entire team were involved in recruiting, grooming, and trafficking young women to service the desires of the global elite, all while secretly recording these encounters for future leverage. This was a man who had connections to presidents, prime ministers, Hollywood A-listers, tech billionaires, and members of royal families around the world. His private island, his New York mansion, his ranch in New Mexico. These weren't just party venues. They were sophisticated honeypot operations designed to compromise the rich and powerful. And the women who were part of this world, they weren't all victims in the traditional sense. Many were willing participants who saw these connections as stepping stones to wealth, fame, and social status. Which brings us to Meghan Markle and her fascinating journey from struggling actress to duchess. Now, personally, I'm not going to confirm everything I've seen on the internet because some of it could be photoshopped, some could be deliberate disinformation. But what I will say is this. When you look at Meghan's past, when you trace her trajectory from briefcase girl on deal or no deal to allegedly becoming what's known in certain circles as a yacht girl, the transition isn't surprising at all. In fact, it's exactly the kind of progression you'd expect from someone with her particular combination of ambition, moral flexibility, and willingness to do whatever it takes to climb the social ladder. For those who might not be familiar with the term yacht girl, let me explain what we're talking about here. These are women who are essentially high-class escorts who cater to extremely wealthy men during events like the Cannes Film Festival, Monaco Grand Prix, or other exclusive gatherings where the global elite congregate. They are flown in, put up in luxury accommodations, and expected to provide companionship and often much more to billionaires, oligarchs, Hollywood mogul, and other powerful figures. It's a world where beautiful women are commodities, where sexual favors are currency, and where the right connection can launch someone from obscurity to global prominence overnight. And here's where it gets really interesting. Multiple sources are now suggesting that there are photographs, actual photographic evidence of Meghan at various events connected to Epstein's circle. Now, could some of these be photoshopped? Absolutely. But when you start seeing patterns, when you start connecting dots, when you realize that Meghan has always been drawn to wealthy, powerful men who could advance her career and social status, suddenly these connections don't seem so far-fetched, do they? Think about it logically. Meghan spent years in Hollywood trying to make it big, networking at every opportunity, attending parties, galas, charity events, anywhere she could rub shoulders with the rich and famous. She was a woman with expensive tastes but limited income. Someone who was desperate to break into elite circles, but lacked the traditional credentials or connections to do so legitimately. Epstein and his associates were deeply embedded in that world, weren't they? They had connections to Hollywood elites, politicians, tech mogul, fashion designers, art collectors. Exactly the kind of people Meghan was desperate to network with. Is it really such a stretch to imagine that their paths might have crossed? That a beautiful, ambitious actress looking for her big break might have found herself at parties or events where Epstein and his associates were recruiting, that someone with Meghan's particular skill set, the ability to charm older men, to make them feel special and desired to play whatever role was needed to achieve her goals, might have caught their attention. And let's not forget about Meghan's documented history with older, wealthy men. Her relationship with celebrity chef Corey Vidiello, who was significantly older and welcomed in Toronto's social scene. Her marriage to Trevor Engelson, a successful producer who could have opened doors for her in Hollywood. Even her brief but highly publicized relationship with professional golfer Rory McIlroy. There's a clear pattern here of a woman who strategically targets men who can advance her career and social status. But here's where the story takes a truly sinister turn, and this is where Harry's desperate fight for IP status in the UK starts to make a lot more sense. Now, Harry claims his battle for IP protection is all about security, about protecting his family from threats and ensuring their safety. But here's what most people don't understand about IP status. It doesn't just provide physical security protection. It provides the highest level of secrecy and confidentiality possible under British law. It would essentially shield any information about Meghan's past from ever coming to light through official channels, government investigations, or freedom of information requests. Think about the implications of that for a moment. If there were compromising photographs, if there were witness statements, if there were financial records or communication logs that connected Meghan to Epstein's operation, IP status would make it virtually impossible for that information to ever see the light of day through official channels. Any investigation would be shut down. Any whistleblower would face serious criminal charges. And any journalist trying to dig deeper would hit a wall of government secrecy. Some sources are suggesting that British intelligence, MI5 or MI6, may have already scrubbed Meghan's name from certain lists and documents to protect Harry and, by extension, the royal family from scandal. Think about how catastrophic it would be for the monarchy if it came to light that a senior member of the royal family was married to someone with connections to the world's most notorious sex trafficking operation. The damage to the institution would be incalculable. The international embarrassment would be unbearable, and the political ramifications would be enormous. So yes, it would absolutely be in everyone's best interest to make sure that any such connections never became public knowledge. Harry's fight for IP status suddenly makes perfect sense when viewed through this lens. It's not about protecting his family from paparazzi or online trolls. It's about preventing the exposure of information that could destroy not just the Sussexes, but potentially bring down the entire monarchy. But here's what really gets my blood boiling: Meghan's behavior throughout all of this. Her desperate attempts to control narratives, her constant threats of legal action against anyone who dares to question her version of events. This is a woman who is absolutely terrified of her past being exposed, and it shows in every single move she makes. Look at how she's handled every controversy, every question about her background, every attempt to dig into her history. Deny, deflect, play the victim, threaten lawsuits, claim racism or sexism, or whatever other victimhood card might work in that particular situation. It's the playbook of someone who has a lot to hide, someone who knows that if the truth ever came out, it would destroy everything she's built. A person with nothing to hide doesn't react this way to legitimate questions about their past. A person with nothing to hide doesn't need an army of lawyers and PR specialists working around the clock to manage their image and suppress negative stories. A person with nothing to hide doesn't marry into the royal family and then immediately start trying to change centuries-old protocols and traditions to suit their particular needs and insecurities. And speaking of things that don't add up, let's dive deep into those invisible children, shall we? Because the more you examine the Archie and Yacht situation, the more absolutely bizarre and suspicious it becomes. We're supposed to believe that Meghan has given birth to 2 children, raised them for several years, and yet we have less credible photographic evidence of their existence than we do of most celebrity pets. Every single image that's been released is carefully staged, heavily filtered, faces obscured, or taken from such a distance that it could literally be anyone's children. Meanwhile, William and Catherine's children are regularly seen, photographed by credible sources, interacting naturally with their parents and extended family members. We've watched George, Charlotte, and Louis grow up before our eyes, seen their personalities develop, witnessed genuine family moments that couldn't possibly be staged or faked. But with the Sussex children, nothing. Absolutely nothing that passes even the most basic credibility test. And when Meghan does mention them, which she often seems to forget to do unless specifically prompted, the details are always vague, inconsistent, or downright contradictory. She talks about being overwhelmed by motherhood in her podcast, but how can you be overwhelmed by children who may not even exist in the way she claims they do? Think about the logistics of what we're being asked to believe. Meghan supposedly gave birth to Archie in a London hospital, but the details surrounding that birth were shrouded in unprecedented secrecy. No announcement of labor, no traditional hospital steps photo, no confirmation of which hospital was actually used, no birth certificate ever publicly verified. Then she supposedly gave birth to Yacht at home in California. Again, with no credible medical documentation ever made public, no hospital records, no attending physician willing to go on record. And then there's the matter of their supposed interactions with the royal family. We're told that King Charles has barely met these children who are supposedly his grandchildren, that William and Catherine have essentially no relationship with their supposed niece and nephew. Does this sound normal to you? Even in families with serious rifts and disagreements, grandparents typically want to know their grandchildren, and children usually serve as bridges that can help heal family divisions. But that's not what we're seeing here, is it? Instead, we have Harry and Meghan using these alleged children as emotional weapons against the royal family, simultaneously claiming they want the children to know their royal relatives while making it practically impossible for any meaningful relationships to develop. It's almost as if they are more useful as abstract concepts, as sympathy-generating props in the Sussex victim narrative, than they would be as real flesh and blood human beings with their own needs, desires, and relationships. Now, I want to be very clear about something. I'm not making definitive claims about whether these children exist or not because I simply don't have access to the kind of documentation that would be needed to prove it one way or the other. What I am saying is that the official narrative doesn't make sense, the evidence doesn't add up, and the behavior of everyone involved is highly suspicious. When you set that narrative straight, when you acknowledge that something very strange is going on with this whole situation, then everything else starts to make a lot more sense. Meghan's frequent trips overseas without mentioning missing her children until someone specifically asks about it. The complete lack of candid, unposed photographs showing natural parent-child interactions. The refusal to allow the children to develop relationships with their extended royal family. The timing of various announcements and revelations that always seem to coincide with other royal events or positive news stories about William and Catherine. It all fits a pattern of calculated manipulation rather than natural family dynamics. And this brings us to what might be the most disturbing aspect of this entire saga, the relationship between Harry and Meghan themselves. Because the more you examine their interactions, their body language, their public statements about each other, the more obvious it becomes that this is not a genuine love story. This is a transactional relationship between two damaged people who are using each other for their own particular purposes. Look at those recent photos from the Beyoncé concert that Meghan posted on Instagram, all that forced PDA, the awkward hand-holding, the uncomfortable-looking embraces. It's all so painfully orchestrated, so clearly performed for the cameras, rather than expressing genuine affection. Compare those images to the natural warmth and genuine chemistry we see between William and Catherine, even after more than a decade of marriage and 3 children together. The difference is stark and unmistakable, but it's even more telling when you compare Meghan's current photos with Harry to old pictures from her marriage to Trevor Ingleson. People have been doing exactly that comparison on social media, and you know what they are noticing, that she looked genuinely happy with Trevor, genuinely in love, genuinely connected to him in a way that she simply doesn't appear to be with Harry. The smile was real. The body language was natural. The chemistry was obvious and unforced. So what happened? Why did that seemingly happy marriage end so abruptly and coldly? Well, the timing tells us everything we need to know. Meghan dumped Trevor right around the time her career started taking off with Suits, when she began networking with bigger fish in Toronto's social scene. When she started setting her sights on bigger prizes than a moderately successful Hollywood producer, she literally mailed her wedding and engagement rings back to him. Mailed them? Who does that to someone they supposedly loved enough to marry? It's the behavior pattern of a classic gold digger, isn't it? Use people while they are useful, discard them without a second thought when something better comes along. Trevor served his purpose during her struggling actress years, helping her make connections, providing financial stability, giving her a respectable cover story while she pursued other opportunities. But once she outgrew what he could offer, once she started moving in circles where being married to a mid-level producer was more of a liability than an asset, poor Trevor became expendable. And now we're seeing the exact same pattern playing out with Harry, aren't we? He served his purpose as her ticket to global fame, royal titles, and international recognition. He gave her the platform she needed to position herself as a global humanitarian, a voice for the oppressed, a modern-day princess who could command audiences with world leaders and Hollywood A-listers alike. But what happens when that usefulness starts to diminish? What happens when the royal connection becomes more of a burden than an asset? Because that's exactly what's happening now, isn't it? The Sussex brand is toxic. Their approval ratings are in the toilet. Corporate America is backing away from partnerships. Hollywood is quietly distancing itself from their drama. And even progressive causes are finding better, more authentic champions to rally behind. Harry's value as a meal ticket is diminishing rapidly, and you can see the strain showing in every public appearance they make together. Harry looks increasingly uncomfortable, increasingly like a man who's beginning to understand what he's actually gotten himself into. The forced smiles, the tense body language, the way he constantly looks to Meghan for approval before speaking. This isn't the behavior of a happily married man. This is the behavior of someone who's trapped, someone who's starting to realize that he's been played by a master manipulator. And Meghan knows it, which is why she's constantly overcompensating, constantly proclaiming their love in interviews and social media posts, constantly staging these ridiculous photo opportunities to try to convince the world that they are this perfect, happy couple living their best life in California. But, as I always say, when you have to work that hard to convince people of something, it's usually because the opposite is true. The cracks are showing everywhere you look. Harry's recent solo appearances, the reports of separate bedrooms, the body language experts who have noted the increasing distance between them in public appearances, the way they seem to be living parallel lives rather than truly integrated ones. This is not a couple that's growing closer after 7 years of marriage. This is a couple that's slowly but surely growing apart as the reality of their situation becomes impossible to ignore. Now, let's talk about Meghan's business ventures, because this is where her desperation and delusion really become apparent. American Riviera Orchard, her jam-making venture, her Netflix cooking show, her upcoming lifestyle brand launches. Does anyone actually believe she thinks these are going to be successful? Come on. This is a woman who couldn't even sustain a podcast with Spotify, who had her children's cartoon project canceled by Netflix before it even launched, who has failed at every single commercial venture she's attempted since leaving royal duties. But here's the thing that most people don't understand. I don't think commercial success was ever the real point of these ventures. I think they are all part of a much more sophisticated long-term strategy to rehabilitate her image and create the illusion of being a legitimate businesswoman and entrepreneur. Think about it. When she eventually writes her tell-all memoir, when she finally cashes in all those secrets and connections she's been collecting for years, she wants to be seen as someone who tried to build something positive and constructive rather than just another bitter ex-royal trading on family secrets. These business ventures are her cover story, her attempt to create a narrative of a hardworking woman who tried to build legitimate enterprises, but was somehow thwarted by circumstances beyond her control. It's all set up for the victim narrative that will accompany her inevitable revenge memoir, the book that will make Harry's spare look like a children's bedtime story in comparison. Because make no mistake, that memoir is coming. There are already reports circulating that Meghan is working on her own tell-all book, and when it drops it's going to be absolutely explosive. This is a woman who has been collecting secrets, recording conversations, documenting everything for years. She has dirt on the royal family, on Hollywood elites, on political figures, on business leaders, anyone and everyone she's encountered during her remarkable climb from struggling actress to global celebrity. That memoir will be her nuclear option, her final card to play when all other revenue streams dry up and she needs to generate another massive payday. And it will sell millions of copies because people are fascinated by royal scandal, by insider revelations about the rich and famous, by the promise of finally learning the real truth about what goes on behind closed doors in these elite circles. But here's what Meghan doesn't seem to understand. The public is getting tired of her act. We're tired of the victimhood, tired of the hypocrisy, tired of the constant drama and attention-seeking behavior. Her approval ratings are abysmal, her commercial ventures are flopping, and even her former allies in the media and entertainment industry are quietly backing away from the Sussex circus. The GLAAD Awards snub that we talked about recently is just the tip of the iceberg. She's been passed over for the Met Gala, ignored by Emmy panels, excluded from Vanity Fair parties, and dropped from multiple Hollywood pitch meetings. The trend is unmistakable. Real activists and authentic voices are in, and performative personas like Meghan are out. People are starting to see through the carefully constructed facade, starting to understand that her activism has always been more about self-promotion than genuine change. When Florida passed anti-LGBTQ+ legislation, where was Meghan's statement? When hate crimes spiked in California, where was her response? When there were real opportunities to put actions behind her words, to show up when it mattered rather than just when cameras were rolling, she was nowhere to be found. The LGBTQ+ community, like so many others, has figured out that Meghan's allyship is purely transactional. She'll show up during Pride Month or when there's a high-profile event to attend, but she's absent when the real work needs to be done. When the less glamorous but more important battles are being fought in legislatures and courtrooms and community centers around the world. And that's the fundamental problem with everything Meghan does. It's all surface level, all about the appearance of caring rather than genuine commitment to causes and communities. She wants to wear the crown of representation, as one critic put it, but she's never willing to do the actual work that real advocacy requires. This performative activism extends to every aspect of her public persona. The humanitarian trips to Nigeria and Colombia that were more about photo opportunities than substantive aid or development work. The Archwell Foundation that produces more press releases than measurable impact. The various charitable partnerships that seem to exist primarily to generate positive headlines rather than create lasting change. It's all part of the same pattern we've seen throughout her entire public life. The prioritization of image over substance, of publicity over privacy, of personal advancement over genuine service. And people are finally catching on, finally seeing through the carefully crafted PR narrative to understand who she really is underneath all the designer clothes and inspirational quotes. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of this entire saga is what it's done to Harry, the man who was once genuinely beloved by the British public and respected around the world for his military service and charitable work. The transformation has been absolutely heartbreaking to witness. From the cheeky, charming prince who connected so naturally with people from all walks of life, to this hollow, uncomfortable shell of his former self, Harry's recent solo appearances have been particularly telling. When he's away from Meghan, when he's engaging with causes he genuinely cares about like the Invictus Games or veteran support organizations, you can still see glimpses of the man he used to be. But the moment he's back in Meghan's orbit, the light goes out of his eyes. The natural charisma disappears, and he becomes this wooden scripted version of himself that bears little resemblance to the prince we all remember. The isolation has been complete and devastating. His relationship with William, once one of the closest bonds in the royal family, has been utterly destroyed by years of public attacks and private betrayals. His connection to his father, already complicated by the circumstances of Diana's death and Charles's relationship with Camilla, has been further damaged by Harry's willingness to air family grievances in the most public ways possible. Even his military connections, once the source of so much pride and purpose in his life, have been tainted by his decision to commercialize his service through Netflix documentaries and memoir revelations. The men and women he served with, the veterans he once championed so effectively, have largely distanced themselves from his current incarnation as a celebrity complainant living in luxury while criticizing the very institution that gave his life meaning. And for what? What has Harry actually gained from this dramatic life change? A wife who clearly married him for his title and connections rather than genuine love. A lifestyle that requires constant hustling for deals and content to maintain. A reputation now defined by grievances and victimhood rather than service and duty. Children who may or may not even exist in the way he claims they do. The trade-off has been catastrophic, and on some level, Harry must know it. Behind closed doors, in the quiet moments when the cameras aren't rolling and the PR teams aren't orchestrating his next appearance, he must look around his Montecito mansion and wonder how he ended up so far from everything and everyone he once held dear. But here's the tragedy. It might be too late for Harry to extract himself from this mess, even if he wanted to. He's revealed too many family secrets, burned too many bridges, caused too much damage to simply walk back into the royal fold and expect forgiveness. The institution has moved on without him, adapted to his absence, and proven that it can function perfectly well without the drama and disruption he brought to it. William and Catherine have stepped up magnificently, showing exactly the kind of leadership and dedication that the monarchy needs for the future. Even while Catherine has been battling cancer with incredible grace and dignity, they've maintained their focus on service, on using their platform to make genuine differences in areas like early childhood development, mental health awareness, and environmental conservation. King Charles has proven himself to be exactly the steady, principled monarch the country needed, even while dealing with his own health challenges. His vision for a streamlined, more efficient monarchy focused on core duties and authentic service has been vindicated completely by the contrast with the Sussex circus of constant drama and self-promotion. And Queen Camilla has finally received the recognition she deserves for decades of loyal service and support. Her transformation from the most hated woman in Britain to a respected and appreciated member of the royal family is one of the most remarkable rehabilitation stories in modern royal history, achieved not through PR campaigns or victim narratives, but through consistent, dignified service over time. This is what real royalty looks like. Not the Hollywood theatrics and grievance-mongering that Harry and Meghan have been peddling, but quiet dignity, consistent service, and an understanding that the institution is bigger than any individual personality or personal ambition. The monarchy has survived and thrived for over 1,000 years because it embodies values that transcend the temporary occupants of its roles: duty, service, continuity, tradition. Harry and Meghan fundamentally misunderstood this principle. They thought they could modernize the monarchy by making it more like celebrity culture, more focused on individual personalities and personal narratives rather than institutional service. They wanted to be the stars of the royal story rather than supporting characters in a much larger, more important drama that's been unfolding for centuries. Their failure was inevitable because they were trying to impose American celebrity values on a British constitutional institution that operates according to completely different principles. In America, individual success and self-promotion are celebrated. In the British monarchy, self-effacement and institutional loyalty are the highest virtues. Meghan never understood this difference, and she successfully corrupted Harry's understanding of his role and responsibilities. The result has been the disaster we're witnessing today. Two people who traded something precious and irreplaceable for celebrity status and financial gain, only to discover that neither fame nor money can replace the sense of purpose and belonging that comes from genuine service to something greater than yourself. And now, as the walls close in around them, as their various schemes and narratives begin to unravel, as the truth about their past connections and current deceptions starts to emerge, they're facing the inevitable reckoning that comes to everyone who builds their lives on lies and manipulation. The Epstein connections, if they exist, are just one piece of a much larger puzzle of deception and exploitation. The invisible children, the failing marriage, the commercial disasters, the social ostracism, it's all part of the same pattern of a couple who thought they could manipulate their way to permanent success and relevance without ever being held accountable for their actions. But truth has a way of surfacing, doesn't it? No matter how many lawyers you hire, no matter how many threats you make, no matter how many times you play the victim card, reality eventually catches up with everyone. And for Harry and Meghan, that reckoning appears to be arriving faster than they ever imagined possible. The master manipulator who thought she could fool the world is about to learn that you can't hide the truth forever. The puppet prince who sacrificed everything for a woman who saw him as nothing more than a useful idiot is about to discover the true cost of his betrayal. And we'll be here to witness every moment of their downfall, because after years of watching them attack the institution we love and the people we respect, seeing justice finally served is going to be absolutely delicious. The fairy tale is over, the masks are coming off, and the real Meghan Markle, the yacht girl, the gold digger, the master manipulator who destroyed a prince and tried to bring down a monarchy, is finally being exposed for who she really is. And once that process is complete, once all the secrets are revealed and all the lies are exposed, there will be no coming back from the devastation they've brought upon themselves. So, buckle up, my loyal viewers, because we're in for the ride of our lives. The Sussex saw is far from over, but we're definitely approaching the final act. And it's going to be more dramatic, more shocking, and more satisfying than anything we could have imagined. The truth is coming, and when it arrives, it's going to change everything we thought we knew about this entire sordid story. What do you think, my royal truth seekers? Are you ready for the full truth about Meghan Markle to finally come to light? Do you believe the Epstein connections are real? How long do you think this failing marriage can continue before it completely implodes? And what do you think will be the final straw that brings down their house of cards once and for all? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Hit that like button if you appreciate fearless royal truth-telling, and don't forget to subscribe for more explosive revelations. Until next time, keep seeking the truth and supporting our real working royals. They are the ones who deserve our respect and loyalty.